Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the Senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. Welcome to this week's edition of Kibbitzing with Kagan, brief conversations with people I find fascinating. Today I am chatting with Maryland's Aging Secretary. No, Secretary of Aging. We're all aging. So the Secretary of Aging, Carmel Roque. Secretary Roque, thank you so much for making the time to chat today.
It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So, just like every member of the Moore Miller administration's cabinet, your background is so impressive and you bring such a wealth of experience and skills. I want to do that part briefly and then move on to your enormous portfolio and all the important work you do. You went to Mills College in California, got your master's at the University of Chicago. Tell me briefly about your childhood and how you got to Maryland, because then you were president and CEO of Keswick Care and award-winning recognized CEO. So tell us about your journey.
Well, I was born and raised in Texas, and I, on my mother's side, come from a long family of lawyers, judges, and cattle ranchers. And on my
Wow.
father's side, and my last name is French, that's my father's name, Rogue. Um, they were French Quarter New Orleanians. So um, I grew up in Texas mostly because my dad worked for the space industry
Nice.
and was an engineer. And I found my way to Mills College in California. And I have to say, going from Texas to California was quite a journey
I
in
can
many, many
imagine.
ways. And
Yes.
I loved California. I thought I was going to stay there, but I got interested in what did I want to do next. And what I wanted to do next was to go to the School of Social Service Administration at the University of Chicago.
Hmm.
And I lived there for 7 years. That's where I met my husband, Stephen
Nice.
Bell.
Nice.
And I got interested in caring for older people and their families and their care providers a little bit while I was in college because I worked um, in a nursing home during the summer months. And I got really interested in just that whole population.
Hmm.
And then when I went to the University of Chicago, I got involved in a research project that the University of Chicago School of Gerontology was doing. And it was specifically about taking care of people who had dementia in a nursing home setting. And, back in the day, and this was way back in the day,
Yes.
well, best practice was you tied people up and drugged them. We
Oh.
really didn't know much else to do.
Hmm.
And this study that I was engaged in, this research project, really had to do with not tying people up, really reducing the medication load, taking people outside,
Mm.
getting sunlight and exercise, and really doing things that we now think of as sort of best practice for reducing some of the psychiatric and behavioral complications that go with dementia.
That's
Well,
great.
that was it for me.
Right. I
I
love
had
that.
I bit the bug. I was like ready at that point,
That's
and the
amazing.
rest of my career has sort of followed along.
Amazing. So you are one of the very, very final members of the Moore Miller administration's cabinet that I've had the chance to kibitz with. And so I have been asking everybody, where did you first meet Wes Moore? And tell me about the journey of applying or being approached to come and join the cabinet.
Well, I've lived in Maryland now for close to 30 years,
Hmm.
and in fact, in Howard County, and raised my two children here. And I I had just left my position at Keswick as CEO,
Hmm.
and I was in that wonderful state that many people my age now find themselves, which is what is the next journey? What is
Yes.
the next thing I'm going to be doing? And I hadn't really quite made up my mind, but I've been very active with a lot of volunteer groups, particularly folks that were working on aging service issues.
Hmm.
And I got this phone call one night,
I love it.
and it was, from chief of staff, and he wanted to know would I be willing to come in and talk to the governor that Friday, or well, actually, at that point, he
Governor-elect.
was the governor.
Okay.
Well, he was still governor-elect, I guess,
Yes.
because if this was in January, late January, and I was caught off guard.
I love that.
But I said, yes, I would love to.
Uh-huh.
So I did indeed go and meet the governor,
Yes.
and we had the most amazing conversation.
That's the way it
And
goes.
and I just knew this is an individual that is going to lead Maryland in ways that I can be so proud of, and
Amazing.
our values aligned. And
Yes.
fundamentally, at the end of the day, you have to have shared values
Yep.
and shared underlying principles. And
Fantastic.
so I said, yes, I want
Amazing.
to serve. And
All right.
it was not on my bucket list, but
Well,
but it's been wonderful.
I'm
Just
so glad.
wonderful.
Well, we're lucky to have you. We have a lot to run through, and so we're going to have some brief questions and answers here. But I want you to start with give someone who's not aware, give the very brief overview of what the mission is of the Department of Aging.
So the Department on Aging, we see our mission really is to find a way to create a world where older people in Maryland can live lives that are financially secure, socially connected, purposeful, and healthy. And everything that we do is geared toward impacting norms, policies, programs, funding toward that goal.
Amazing. Okay. Well, the statistics for someone who's watching or listening who may not be aware, more than a third of Marylanders today are over 50, and 1.4 million are over 60. And those numbers are just going to keep growing because we are all aging. So talk about the Longevity Ready Maryland initiative that you've been working on that the governor launched, because that's very exciting. A 10-year plan, multi-sector. Why don't you give us a sneak peek? And I know you'll be rolling it out later in 2025.
Right. So we chose in Maryland to take a longevity approach. And it's a little different than saying aging approach, because aging is a biological reality.
Yes.
Longevity is a measure of lifespan or length.
Mm-hmm.
And what we wanted to say is that in order to really make sure we meet that goal for older Marylanders, this is multi-sector. This is across all state agencies.
Mm-hmm.
This is much broader than just what the Department on Aging does.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did get an executive order in January of last year.
Yes.
We'll be open for public comment in March, and there are a couple of specific dates that will occur. But we have 4 EPIC goals, and EPIC only in the sense that they are all encompassing. They're really
Yes.
big.
Yes.
And our goals are, we want to build what we call a longevity ecosystem. And ecosystem's kind of insider talk, but really it just means all the programs, services, policies, people, everything that needs to be moving together in order to reach these goals that we want. And we want to find a way to promote economic opportunity for all. And that really has to do with older people in the workforce,
Yes.
really looking at ways that we can help create policies and procedures and programs that enhance that. We want to help prepare Marylanders for longevity, for longer lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that's related to the fact that most people in the country and in Maryland don't have enough money saved for their long life.
Right.
And there are things that really must change for that to improve.
Mm-hmm.
And then we want to optimize, those things that contribute to our health, because living longer is
mental and physical.
Yes, living longer in and of itself is not a great thing if
Right.
our health and well-being
Right.
is not matching that.
Right.
So those are the 4 EPIC goals. And then we met with stakeholders. We have, I think it's over 90 recommendations.
Oh my golly.
We've kind of winnowed those down. And we're going through the next iteration after this plan has public comment and is sent on to the governor for signature will be the implementation phase.
Perfect.
And that's going to include lots of stakeholders as well.
Great.
Okay.
So the list of stakeholders that you're engaged with, I saw on your website, caregivers, healthcare providers, philanthropists, nonprofits, educators, business, advocacy groups, elected officials. I mean, you're working with everyone, and I know you're working with other cabinet secretaries. Um, One of the realities, and I have so many questions for you, but one of the realities is that as we get older, many of us will end up with disabilities. So one of the programs, this is taking a detour here, one of the programs you have is the Durable Medical Equipment Reuse Program. I suspect that most people have never heard about that. So why don't you give a shout out, a promo here for what that is and how that can be helpful to our friends and family and neighbors.
And you said something that we're really working hard on, which is a lot of people don't know about it.
Right,
So what the medical reuse program allows us to do is to accept equipment, refurbish it completely, and for free, provide it to anybody in the state who needs it.
right.
And there is a process that involves the physical therapist who can make sure that this equipment is just right for you. The equipment gets sent out into their various locations across the state that are not where the warehouse is, because the warehouse is a little bit distant.
Yes.
So we've recently done a lot of work to increase our ability to actually get the equipment to individuals all across the state and not having them have to come to the warehouse.
And are there financial criteria?
There are none at all.
So multimillionaire,
Anybody who needs equipment can come.
anybody who
And
needs,
and it serves many people who have insurance, but are on they're waiting for
yes,
equipment,
yes.
or perhaps they've been denied,
Mhm.
or what they really need, their insurance company won't pay for. So,
So I have a bill this year that was just heard last week, which is where I just learned of the program. Senator Kramer brought it up, and we were talking about that. Is the consumer right to repair? And it's right to repair powered
yep,
wheelchairs
yep,
because that's a huge problem. And the loaners may not work with someone's body and their physical needs, and so needing to be able to keep it local and not have the huge delays or deprivation of
right.
the ability to get around. Amazing. Well, one of the ways that you get your stock in that is when people pass on and they generously give grandma's wheelchair, walker, cane, other equipment, and donate it. How will people hear about where to donate and how to engage to make sure that it can be sort of cycled forward and reused?
I think at this point, the best thing to do, if you can, is to go to the website,
Yep.
and there will be directions about what to do there. You can also call the you can call the office, and there is someone at the office at Durable Medical Equipment who can answer questions. And
Good.
that phone number is also on the website.
Perfect.
Um, and if the website doesn't work, you can call the Department on Aging, and usually there is a person at the department who can answer. But what I'm really encouraging people to do is call their local area agency on aging,
Yes.
because your local office is the one that's going to be able to be the most efficient in
Hmm.
responding to questions and concerns.
Good. Good. That's perfect. Um, so do you help facilitate, does your department facilitate or offer tips about talking to family or loved ones about wills, living wills, what they want done with their remains? Is that something you think about or service you offer?
It might come up first. Let me just be very clear about something. The state unit on Aging, which is my department,
Mhm.
doesn't do programs and services.
Mhm.
We fund the local area agencies on aging and other not-for-profits to do the actual work. Now, you can find information about that on the state website.
Yes.
You could call the state office, but really what you want to do is be talking to your local area agency on aging. Specifically to the question that you asked, through the caregiver programs
Mhm.
that are operated at a local level, that conversation may be part of it. But with regards to actual technical advice, that isn't something that our agency is very involved in,
Sure.
unless it's coming through people who are coming for the Medicare or Social Security counseling aspect of things. That conversation might come up, but they're likely to be redirected, I think.
Yes. That
And
makes
I
total
and
sense.
I'm not sure how. I know I talk about those things with my attorney.
Sure.
I'm not sure um, where else that might be available. I do know we talked with um, the controller's office, and that was something they were interested in trying to also help people a little bit
Good.
with.
It's a service, and it's the reality of we're all going to die. The question is when, how, and whether we're ready for it. So,
Mhm.
yes. Um, and that was such a great, thank you, clarifying overview. When you talk about working with nonprofits, how do you select and what's the process? Is it the 24 local counties that recommends or selects who they are going to be partnering with, or are there
So
criteria?
we send out from our agency, we send out a request
Mhm.
for proposals,
Yes,
and there is a very systematic process that goes into place, so that people can, what we're wanting to be sure is that we're being fair and equitable, and that it's a standard procedure across the board. So the
yes,
request for proposals goes out. We push it out through our local area agencies and ask them to please, you know, send us people they think, organizations that should be applying, et cetera.
right.
And then after they go through the vetting process, a group is selected, and then we start to actually release the funding.
Perfect. So you talked about check our website. Not every senior is tech savvy and tech comfortable. So what do you suggest for other options and other avenues for someone who's not really so good at surfing the web?
Mhm. I would say call. There
Mhm.
are phone numbers for every area agency on aging. There is a phone number for Maryland Access Point,
Yes.
and there is a phone number for the Department on Aging.
Hmm.
And the other thing that many of the counties do is they actually produce a paper
A
document.
flyer. Yes.
Mhm.
Yep.
And although we don't do one at the state level because all of that's very particular to the locals,
100%.
there are different places where you can pick that up in different communities. I'm not sure about in Rockville and Gaithersburg, but I know that they're distributed widely.
Sure. Well, at public events, at the county fair, or at large county gatherings, they are aging folks. I mean, different community
Right.
groups often have booths and information. What about language access? We are increasingly diverse. How well do you think that the 24 aging offices do in reaching diverse
I,
populations?
I think that they all are doing different types of things to try to make sure that they're responsive to their particular communities.
Mm-hmm.
Across the state, all of our electronic communications have to have translation available, as well as lots being done around for people who are deaf and hard of hearing, for
Yeah.
people who are blind. So there's a lot of work that we're doing statewide, actually.
Yep, that was
Um,
my law. Language access was something that I mean, my district is among the most linguistically diverse in the country, and
yep,
so
yep.
that's important. That's great. How does Maryland, in your opinion, compare to other states in terms of services and programs and funding like that which you manage?
Um, I'd say we're probably about in the middle.
Okay. Okay.
All of us receive federal funds through the Older Americans Act funding through the various federal programs that are
Yep.
funded for older people. And we also receive state funding.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think, Maryland's not a very big state. Geographically, it's big,
Right.
but we only have around 6 something million people. And so I think given the size of the state, our funding is pretty adequate.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just make the point that most of the funding that actually serves an older population and their families and caregivers doesn't flow through the Department on Aging.
Mm-hmm.
It flows through transportation, housing, community development, disabilities, labor to an
Mm-hmm.
extent. And so it's sometimes just looking at the funding that flows through the Department on Aging, people will think, well, that's not very much. It is not the majority of the
Right.
funding.
Right.
The health department
Yes.
receives the majority of funding
Yes.
that serves older people.
That makes total sense. So staying on funding, the elephant in the room here, pun intended. So the reality of state funding is that we started off the year with a projected $2.7 billion shortfall, but then I call it the Trump-Musk administration and the way they are slashing and burning at the federal level. So, what do you anticipate? What has already happened in their first several weeks, and then what's your biggest fear? How are you all starting to think about and anticipate continued support in with diminished funds?
So let me make sure I'm answering the question you asked, which
Please.
I think is related to um, the potential cuts in funding coming from the federal level.
You talked about the Older Americans Act and
Yeah,
that much of
yeah,
the funding comes through there, some
right,
from the state, which
right,
might be reduced, and then a
right,
lot from the federal government.
right. So, this administration, the Moore Miller administration, started planning
Yes,
for various scenarios
yes,
quite a while ago,
yes.
and we continue to
Hmm.
really stay ahead, I think, of
Hmm.
some of what's going on. So you're probably aware of the lawsuits and those kinds of
Hmm.
things. Um, the Older Americans Act funding comes under Health and Human Services at the federal level, and,
Hmm.
and that agency is being scrutinized.
Hmm.
We're not experiencing any stop in our funding, and
Knock
uh,
wood, knock all the
yeah,
places
yeah, yeah.
so far.
And as an agency, what we're doing is our work and
Hmm.
continuing to do our work until there is a reason why we cannot. So I say that because I want people to not begin to panic
Yes,
before they need to.
yes.
um, there's a lot of, just sort of flooding the uh, airways with all kinds of this is happening and that is happening.
Hmm.
But from the Department on Aging's point of view, we are business as usual,
Yes.
and
Well,
we're
mhm.
participating in the lawsuits and those kinds of things that are happening to try and ensure that business will continue as
Yes.
usual.
That is so calming and reassuring. That's actually a great message. So thank you for that. Um, so I realize that you are not the service provider, and that's been clear, but certainly your expertise, yours personally, and those in your department, I'm sure you work with, this is a total pivot here, with the Attorney General's office on consumer ripoffs and scams that are targeted to seniors. Um, Give an example of something that you're working on or have recently worked on with another department that you're helping to push out there and maybe provide to the 24 counties so they don't have to create it from scratch.
So specific to scams, et cetera, um, we one of the things our agency did was we were very active with a task force that was mandated to work specifically on those kinds of issues, and they came up with many recommendations.
Yes.
And we are, we know that in future years there's going to be the need for some major system change around these
Hmm.
things. But we're very aware of, and we work with ARP on this also.
The American Association of Retired People.
Yes, thank you for
Yes.
that. But, there's this issue of, the gift cards or,
Yes.
what
Yes.
people were buying, and we're really, we promote, um, at the area agency level, there are workshops and seminars and, uh, all kinds of things that are aimed at trying to help people know how to protect themselves.
Yes.
Um, and so we've participated in those efforts, and also when there are days where that are designated in Maryland to be specific about fraud and abuse and elevating awareness around it. I think that's really what's important. I
Yes.
know right now there are some bills pending um, that are aimed at trying to protect older people. So we'll see what happens with some of that as well.
Yes. Yes. Um, you referenced dementia earlier. Um, Caregivers, the person who worries that whether they have dementia, the diagnosis, the services, the care. What should someone who's watching this or listening to this know about dementia, Alzheimer's, and other afflictions that affect too many of us as we get older?
Well, with my clinical hat, I'll
Okay.
just say they should be aware that Maryland has some of the highest levels of dementia in the country, Prince
Okay.
George's County and Baltimore City in particular. And a lot of what is being researched and better understood now is that dementia has a lot of the social determinants of health actually
Yes. Yes.
impact your likelihood to
So that's
become
diet
have
and
dementia.
exercise and smoking and
Yep,
probably
yep.
alcohol.
Because it turns out, your brain is actually part of your body.
Imagine that. Yes.
So I encourage people. We are working closely to implement the National Family Caregiver Strategy, and
Hmm.
we've recently brought on a person to lead that work. And she also is chairing. There is a caregiving commission in Maryland. But I would just encourage people to. Um, I always start with you should see your doctor.
Yes.
You are worried, you should see a doctor.
Yes.
And don't go worrying, not knowing. And then I think the other part of it is there is a huge movement to destigmatize
Mm.
that particular disease.
Hmm.
And I would say, don't begin to socially isolate. Don't
Yes.
begin to stop talking about it. Um, this is just part of our society right now,
Yeah,
something we're coming to terms with.
true. So speaking about isolation, depression, isolation, is another affliction that faces many seniors who may be otherwise perfectly healthy. How do we keep seniors engaged in the community? Volunteerism and activism.
There's a lot being written about social isolation now,
Hmm.
and it is something that we actually had Dr. Tom Cujo, who's a internationally known researcher on the topic, actually came and testified for us on a bill we have, which is very directed at um, being able to have people receive a phone call or a visit or
Yes.
something of that nature. And um, I I would say, it isn't unique to older people. We
Mhm.
actually are living in a time of social isolation,
Mm-hmm.
particularly post-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And the best thing people can do for themselves is to um, find ways to be connected to
Yes.
other people.
Yes.
And it can be hard if you're an older person and you aren't going to work every day.
Mm-hmm.
So we're particularly interested at the agency right now in reaching out at very hyperlocal levels to people who are not getting out of their homes for a variety of reasons,
Yes.
and letting that be a local solution. So we're actually funding villages and
Yes.
other nonprofits who they know their neighbors. This is a neighbor to neighbor kind
Perfect.
of activity.
Perfect.
And I think that's really important.
Yes. Well, I have just a few questions before we shift to our Fast Five. Um, First off, what are you proudest of having accomplished so far as Secretary of the Department on Aging?
I'm the proudest of the fact that we have rebuilt the agency.
Mhm.
So we now are very close to fully staffed,
Nice.
and we've reoriented the agency so that we are very much relevant
Mm-hmm.
across all of state government now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because of the work we're doing with our sister agencies and addressing longer lives across many, many domains. So
Mm-hmm.
very proud of that.
That's fantastic. What is your biggest challenge?
Well,
How long a list, huh?
yeah,
Pick one.
it's interesting because it's not just the financial issues, not just the budget. It really is making sure that we can have an operating statewide network.
Mm-hmm.
So having the 19 area agencies on aging operating as a network collectively
Mm-hmm.
across the state is really challenging. And we're working on that. And
Yes.
I think we're going to get there.
Good for you. Good for you. Um, what is it like to be the Secretary on Aging and be aging yourself?
It's fantastic.
I love
I love to tell people I'm going to be 70. And
it.
part of it is because I want to help challenge a little bit
Yes.
people's assumptions about later life.
Yes.
Um, and so I think it's a really fortuitous thing to have an actual older person
Yes.
um, out there talking about this.
My intern who my interns always help with some of the research. And one of them, there was a screenshot of what 50 used to look like, and it was Rue McClanahan as Golden Girls,
Yeah.
and aging and sedentary and
Mhm.
gossipy and all that.
Mhm.
And then what 50 looks like now. And it was like Beyonce singing and dancing and
Yeah.
scantily clad. And,
It's
that's things
different.
have changed. Things have
Yes, they have.
well, Secretary Carmel Roque, before we go to the Fast Five, is there anything we haven't talked about that you'd like to share here?
I think you covered and you let me cover. Thank you.
I
Many of the things that I'm passionate about.
had like
And
9 pages of notes for you. That's a lot.
so, no, I think we're good.
Okay. Well, Secretary Carmel Roque, the Department on Aging, it is time for your Fast Five. 5 quick questions with 5 quick answers to let folks get to know you better. Question number one, what is one tip that you'd like to share on aging well?
Stay physically active if you can, whatever that means to you.
Perfect. Question two, how do you relax and stay fit?
I do yoga and I walk 2 miles every day.
Nice. What time of day?
Well, it used to be in the evening, but now I have a treadmill. That's what my
Okay.
husband gave me for my 45th wedding anniversary.
Okay. It's a good thing that wasn't a hint. For those who haven't seen her in person, Secretary Roque is very, very thin, very tiny person. Question number three. If you could travel anywhere in the world and neither time nor money were an object, where would you choose to go?
I've always wanted to go to Portugal.
Well, that seems doable.
Yeah.
Okay, what are you doing this summer? I think you're going to Portugal or whenever you can make it work. Question number four. What is the best advice you've ever been given?
Be yourself.
Nice.
Be yourself.
And question number five, the question that I ask all of my guests, Secretary Carmel Roque, what is your hidden secret superpower? What's a skill or talent you have, something you're really good at that most folks can't do?
I don't know that most people can't do it, but my secret power is being incredibly collaborative.
Nice.
I love working with other people. And it's from being a middle child. You
That
get really good at it while you're still very young.
I love that. Good job. Well, thank you for all you do. Thank you for making the time to share what you do because I think you are a known agency, but not a seen and understood agency. So and department. So thank you for that, and I look forward to crossing paths with you very soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This was wonderful.
Thank you. Stay well.